I have $50,000. I've saved up this. I'm trying to buy my first investment. What should I buy? What should I get? To bring up a previous thing that we talked about, it's a lot of people want to have the sexy investment, meaning they want to do a fix and flip and make $100,000. They want to do a crazy burr and make all this kind of money, invest $100,000, put 40 into it, cash out refi at 350,000 ARV or whatever it might be. But honestly, I tell a lot of people that
you named quite a few neighborhoods around Northeast Philly, Roxborough, and Graduate Hospital, I think you said.
Yeah.
These are pretty big areas. They're not like small areas like those areas around Center City. And they are very different as well. So which one of those areas you would say that you would get the best deal as far as your appreciation and also the time on the market that you will have finding a new tenant?
That's a good question. I think
Welcome to the Philly Landlord Guy show. I'm your host, Yuri Skripnichenko, the guy with impossible last name. Do not try to remember it. Just think of me as the Philly Landlord Guy. I am a licensed real estate broker and a certified property manager in city of Philadelphia. And today we're joined by a Philadelphia real estate agent who helps investors buying properties across the city. His name is Alan Astrians, and he will walk us through his deals, where it's best to buy, where it's best to invest, and what kind of properties he is usually looking into and advising his clients in buying. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. Alan, thank you for joining us today. If you can tell us a little bit more about yourself and how you got into real estate.
Yeah. So my father is a broker, a real estate broker. He's been a broker since, I think it was 2004, 2005. He got his license in the late 90s. And ever since then, I've just been, tagged along with showings and, I've been in the office a lot. And so I've just been really exposed to that environment. And then when I went to Penn State for my electrical engineering degree, I studied it. I, got my degree. I started working, and I just wasn't really feeling that type of environment. I really wasn't feeling the 9 to 5. I also didn't like what I was doing, wasn't rewarding. So I started, just reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and just started absorbing that. And I had a good resource with my father already, so it just kind of all really fell together.
You left your engineering career to pursue your real estate here in Philly. What made you choose this market, or why did you decide to stay here?
I think proximity to family, just already being here in this area. I already had my license at that point, so I figured I would just kind of give it a go. And while I was actually working at the engineering job, I was already selling my first couple of houses. So that kind of already transitioned me to doing that. Trust me, if there's other places I could live, I think I would at this point. But, I think just the circumstance of being with family and friends and already having my license here.
Yeah. And looking back at that time, would you do the same again, just quitting your engineering job and getting into real estate full time?
Absolutely. I think if I were to look back, the only thing that I would possibly do differently, I think I would probably pursue a career in structural engineering or something that was a little bit more, I guess, focused to what I do now. Because electrical engineering, while, there are concepts that are applicable, I think that those concepts are really applicable only for physics 101 and things that are just very basic level. Once you get into more complicated electrical engineering things, I mean, you're talking about intense equations that no one's using, and it's really not applicable to what I do now.
So I know that what I've read about you, that your first property was a house hack in Philadelphia. So can you tell us a little bit more about that? Share what neighborhood it was in and what made it the right deal at that time for you.
I actually was looking for properties for myself at this time. This is kind of when I was still working at my engineering job, and I was already starting to gain a little bit of traction with clients. Maybe I had one or two, And I had these investors who were looking at properties, and we would go from one house to another. And at this time, I was also, crunching my deals, looking at my cash on cash, like I was doing all the exercises on bigger pockets. And so anytime that I would see a property with them, I would just analyze it. I would just take a look at it. And they ended up looking at this triplex in Fox Chase, which was one of the better neighborhoods that they were looking at. All the other neighborhoods were probably like D or C class, and this neighborhood was really nice. And so I called up my father and I said, hey, look, they don't want to buy this, but I think that this might be something decent. So he scheduled his own appointment, went out there and just told me, hey, you got to buy it. And I went for it. Now, the property needed a lot more work than what either I or him anticipated for. I thought I was going to go in there, like start ripping out cabinets myself, replacing it. Lo and behold, it was a full gut rehab. Like everything needed to be done, down to the bones, basically, because you have knob and tube wiring, you have cast iron plumbing that was over 100 years old. Location was great, but the mechanicals in the property itself just really wasn't. I went in, I did that, and I actually bought the house the day COVID hit. So it was a really sketchy closing. Everyone was wearing masks. No title company was open at the time. It was actually a really scary time because you didn't know what was going to happen with the market. I actually had a buddy who was buying a house at the same time, and he backed out of his deal because he was too scared about what could happen with the market. He was scared that everything was going to drop, that everything was just going to implode. And I guess I just went for it. And it turned out well. And I think that, and I'm not going to say that I'm a genius or anything, but I had a lot of luck in that regard. I bought at the right time. Contractors were begging for work, so it was really cheap to do that kind of renovation. And whereas like today, that would be a very, very difficult thing to find and a very difficult thing to build with the costs that you have today. So
was it a good deal because it was at the COVID time, so you got a good break on the price, or it was before COVID hit and actually it was just a deal that made sense for you back then?
It sort of kind of made sense before COVID, but it wouldn't have been as good of a deal. So like, I bought it for around $210,000. It needed about $150,000 worth of work or so, maybe a little bit more at that time, which was a lot at that time. And maybe it would have been worth 350. So like, you're putting in the same kind of money that you're getting out. So you're not really creating any crazy equity. But now that property is worth close to $600,000. So, and that's in part because of the inflation, because of everything that happened post-COVID market.
Yeah, we picked up a few properties during COVID as well, and they were greatly priced. We even got a 6-unit building that was just fully rehabbed, and they did a great job at rehabbing that property. But they were first-time investors, and they got scared of what's going to happen with COVID, that they will not be able to find tenants and nobody will be paying it. It was right, I think, like in April, so a couple months into COVID when everything was locked down. And we picked up great properties during that time because people just didn't know what was going to happen and if anything is going to happen. So that definitely was a good time for buying something.
It definitely was. And I think it just goes to show that it's not really about if it's good right now, it will eventually be good in the future, no matter kind of what any like up or downs or anything like that. And I think the people who saw that are okay with, hey, I'm going to hold this for a long period of time. I'm not selling it tomorrow. I think that's just a very common and just tried and true strategy.
Yeah, it depends on how long you keep the property. If you want to keep it for a year and hope for crazy appreciation, it's probably not the best place to be in.
But you go to Parks Casino.
Yeah, exactly. So you said that was in Fox Chase. So what would you say Philly neighborhoods do you think have the most upside right now? Either cash flow or appreciation or both?
So I think cash flow is something that's just a very sensitive topic right now. I think that cash flow, it really depends, right? If you're looking at a D-class neighborhood, you're going to have more cash flow, but you're also going to have a lot of other things associated with it. I mostly look at the appreciation side of things. just because typically from the conversations that I have with investors who have been in this game for a while, that's where you're going to make most of your money, is on the appreciation side of things. The cash flow is the part that keeps the lights on, it pays the bills, it puts a little bit of money in your pocket. But ultimately, if you look at the investment as a whole over 10, 20 years, you're making the money on what it's worth then. And so I think the best neighborhoods that have that upside are neighborhoods. Again, I think Fox Chase is great. I think it's really undervalued. I think there's parts of Northeast Philadelphia that are really good as well. I think that looking into 19114, and I'm just naming zip codes here, 19154. This is like Morel Park, Parkwood. I think those areas are pretty good. They've already appreciated quite a bit. I think Roxborough is good too. I think that they did a lot of construction there, so I think that has to get absorbed a little bit. East Falls, I think, is great. Manayunk is great. Graduate Hospital, I think, is just going to keep appreciating in value. Good parts of Fairmount as well. So and the trend that you're probably noticing with what I'm kind of saying is just solid neighborhoods. Like Chestnut Hill is always going to appreciate. Westmount area is always going to appreciate. So I really truly believe in historical data and just kind of putting my eggs in that basket.
Yeah, you didn't name any of the Fishtown or
No.
Brewery Town or any of those kind of like South Philly or North
Up and
Philly
coming.
up and
Yeah.
coming neighborhoods. Why is that?
Because there has to be a lot of things to go right in that neighborhood for things to turn around. We're not like in a very rural part of Texas or Utah or something where there's like a large infrastructure coming in that's going to support thousands and thousands of jobs where you can see that boost, right? We're talking about displacing communities and moving communities around in the hopes that the neighborhood will appreciate, right? You're banking on gentrification. You're banking on people moving out. You're banking on people saying, oh, you know what? I'm okay with living like this for X amount of years because I know that it's going to work, right? And not a lot of people think that way. Not a lot of people believe that. They'll walk down the neighborhood and they'll say, I'm not going to buy this for this much. And I think Fishtown was an exception. And I think Fishtown really did have a really good boom, but I don't gamble. It's long story short. I just don't see it that way. I'd rather spend a little more, put my money on the main line and know that it's going to appreciate 10 years down the road.
Okay. So if we're not talking about appreciation, you named quite a few neighborhoods around Northeast Philly, Roxborough, and Graduate Hospital, I think you said.
Yeah.
These are pretty big areas. They're not like small areas like those areas around Center City. And they are very different as well. So which one of those areas you would say that you would get the best deal as far as your appreciation and also the time on the market that you will have finding a new tenant?
That's a good question. I think Roxborough is probably right now on the lower list. Again, it depends what kind of tenant you're also looking for. If you're looking for a traditional 2-bedroom, 1-bath or a 1-bedroom, 1-bath, Roxborough is struggling right now with that market because so much new construction came up that all that needs to be absorbed. So 2-3 years ago, I was renting out an apartment in very average condition for $1,600 in 2 weeks. Now that's taking me 2 months minimum. So, and I'm renting it a lot lower as well. But if you're looking at twins or 3-bedroom, 2.5-bath homes, those rent out a lot better. And I think the reason why, and this is not just a Roxborough thing, I think it's kind of also a Northeast Philly thing, a Fox Chase thing, maybe not so much a Graduate Hospital thing, but because that's more of like a condensed city as opposed to like a suburban style of living. I think that a lot of people are priced out of this market for buying a home. So people don't have the 5 or the 3 or the 10% down to buy the home. And on top of that, if they do put the 5% down, they're going to be paying way more in the mortgage payment than they would if they just rented out a townhouse or a twin property at that same value. And the difference between a 2-bedroom, 1-bath apartment and that townhouse is maybe $800, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less. And, a 2-bedroom, 1-bath apartment versus a 3-bed, 2.5-bath twin or a row or whatever is a completely different style of living. And so when you have a decent family that can afford it, but maybe doesn't have the down payment or the means to afford the mortgage, you create a lot of competition in that kind of market. So kind of diverging away from your question a little bit, but I think that it depends on what kind of asset you're going to be renting out as well.
Yeah, yeah, and I think it also depends on specifics of the neighborhood and what type of people live in there. By that I mean, like, is it blue collar? Is it white collar? Is it like what is the income level? We definitely seen as well a lot of slowdown in money young. Doesn't matter what type of property it is. It can be a small apartment. It can be a big house. It's just very, very slow across all city right now, but some areas we're still able to rent pretty fast. But in a lot of areas, it's a significant time on the market that properties stay right now. So what areas do you think are overhyped in the city right now? And where do you see investors get burned or overpay for what they should not?
Yeah, like Old Kensington, Fishtown, Brewery Town, Point Breeze, like basically all of those neighborhoods that were just like teetering on the border of like, hey, this is kind of good, but it's not that great. So I think it's those kinds of neighborhoods that people are really struggling in. When everything is going good and when everyone is happy, the economy is good, everyone wants to move, those neighborhoods, they can do well, right? But when you're in this kind of state of economy, and I don't know about you, but I don't think we're in a good economy at all. I think a lot of people are struggling with credit card debt. I think there's a lot of people that are just, a family making $200,000 a year is struggling, and which is crazy. Before COVID, if you made combined $200,000 a year, you're upper middle class. You're doing really, really well. Now, not so much. So, and then going back to what I was saying before, those neighborhoods are just they're teetering, right? They're kind of good, they're kind of not good. And so those are the neighborhoods that really just suffered. And a lot of construction happened, a lot of permitting, a lot of inventory. And when you create a lot of inventory and a lower demand, you get a bad result for the investor.
So do you see that people usually buy in those areas that come out of state and are not familiar with the city, or it's just the hype that spills over the people who live here as well?
That's a really good question. I think it's a combination of both, but I think it's a lot of these out of state investors that read like an article online about like up and coming areas in Philly and they did their online research, which is why on Bigger Pockets I try to tell people that, hey, like, you can't be a computer investor. A computer investor, like, which is basically someone who goes in, just looks at metrics and data and just makes an investment based on those decisions. That's not, it's going to give you a good idea, but I don't think it's going to get you to the finish line all that well. And so, you have to see the neighborhood, understand the neighborhood, be in the neighborhood to be like, hey, like, what's actually going on here? And a lot of times it's not even just visiting the neighborhood once, it's, talking to you or talking to me and being and understanding and living in that neighborhood over time. Because, just a quick metric or decision or article on, Philadelphia Inquirer is not going to get you the actual data. So,
but funny thing that I just thought of when you said that you need to visit neighborhoods, you need to talk to people, you need to talk to property managers, you need to talk to agents. And that's what I do. I talk to my clients a lot, or to new clients, right, about things as where do you need to invest or what kind of rehab you need to do. Because what I've seen in the past, I would say 3 to 4 years, that we have influx of out-of-state investors who, as you say, read an article on Bigger Pockets or went to some kind of class where they teach you how to invest in Philly specifically.
Yep.
And people expect that they will go and get a property under $100,000, that they will put about, $40,000 into it, and then they will rent it out for $2,500 in the neighborhood where it's just not possible.
Correct.
And they would look at PHA pricing that PHA has for Section 8 tenants. And yes, in some zip codes, those prices are much higher than you can actually get on the regular open market. But clients come with this thought in their head that, well, if they say it's $2,500, we will get $2,500 no matter what. Well, it doesn't work that way. And whenever I try to explain that to them, they just don't want to listen to that. I think they trust so much to the source where they read original information or where they got that information from. So when they talk to me and I'm trying to not talk them out of it, but I'm giving them real data from real life experience, they kind of like brush it off and still do what they were reading about. And then they not happy.
And then they call you like a year later and they say, hey, it's not working out.
Yeah, or telling me why it's taking so long or why you're trying to reduce my price. Well, because I told you so. But yeah. So are there any specific zip codes or blocks that you would consider buy and hold gold places that most out of town investors are overlooking?
Again, I think Northeast Philadelphia is still really good. I think that Westmount area is a pretty strong neighborhood. Roxborough is good. Again, it depends on what kind of investment you're looking for. If you're looking at a long-term picture, I think it's still a very solid neighborhood where there are a lot of decent people. I just think that those new apartment complexes need to get rented out and they just need to get absorbed. But honestly, I think that the suburbs, in my opinion, are just really, really strong markets. Bucks County, Montgomery County, Delaware County, and parts, right? Because there's also parts of Bucks County and Montgomery County that you don't want to invest in. I don't think you should invest in. I don't think Croydon is necessarily like the best area, or parts of Bristol. But you look into like being in Central Bucks or Council Rock School District, even Warminster, Salem. You're talking about really solid markets with good level of appreciation, with very high quality tenants and decent school districts. And I think that those markets are very underlooked. And compared to the prices in Philadelphia and what you get out here, you're getting a lot more bang for your buck. And you're pretty much renting them at similar prices, honestly.
Okay. So what you're saying is that properties in the counties are cheaper than similar properties in Philly.
Right now, yeah. And again, depends on where in Philly, right? If we're talking about Northeast Philadelphia, honestly, I consider Northeast Philadelphia and Bucks County to be almost like a division of the neighborhood. I think Northeast Philadelphia is closer to Bucks County than it is to Center City, in terms of neighborhood and style. But if you take a house in Point Breeze, for example, that's $500,000, or you take a townhouse here that's $500,000, you're renting this townhouse way faster. Your appreciation is better. Your taxes are lower because those townhouses that you have in the city, like in Point Breeze, that are new construction, now their abatements are coming to a close, and you're paying almost $10,000 in these taxes. So I just think that you're getting a much bigger bang for your buck. And also, it's easier to manage if you're managing it yourself. There you have to find parking. If you're doing a renovation, the contractor needs a space to park the property, to do something here. You just pull up in the driveway and that's it. It's pretty simple.
Yeah. It sounds like you like to go outside of the city right now. And how are the city policies that we have going on all the time, that changes all the time, like eviction process, LNI, or inspections, affecting your decision on where buy and what to buy?
I mostly bought in the city. I really only have 2 assets that are outside of the city. And the rest of my properties are in Philadelphia. But at the end of the day, it's the person that you put into the building that's really going to dictate your result and how well you're going to do. Because, Philadelphia landlord tenant laws are a lot stricter for the landlord than they are in Bucks County or Montgomery County. But if you have a bad person in Montgomery County and a good person in Philadelphia, meaning your tenant, you're going to obviously do better in Philadelphia than you are going to be in Montgomery County. So the location in which you buy is really important, because that's going to determine mostly who's going to be there and your screening, your application process. But if I were to kind of compare apples and oranges, I would definitely prefer to be in Bucks County or Montgomery County, because in the scenario of a what if, I am in a lot better of a position as a landlord in Bucks County and Montgomery County. If there has to be an eviction. I mean, you never know. You might have somebody that's completely qualified, the best tenant ever for years and years and years. And a couple of years down the line, they get hit with a crazy medical bill that they just can't pay. And now the person has completely changed. And, for understandable reasons at some point. But, when you're running a business, you want to be in the position where it's more favorable for you as opposed to the other way around.
Yeah, actually, there is something that you said while we were talking offline that people should treat real estate not as a business, but as investment. So
Yes.
what do you mean by that? And especially in the context of Philly rentals.
I get a lot of people who, we were talking about this earlier, right? About how you have these computer investors who come in, they say they want to buy something for $100,000, put $40,000 worth of work into it, and then they want to make this much money every single month, right? So everyone focuses really heavy on cash flow. And they think, and all people want to think about is how much money they're making now, today. And that's great, right? Like if the property's not making you money, or if you're burning money owning the property, you probably shouldn't buy it. But at the same time, that's not all there is to real estate investing. Where like going out, chasing high Section 8 rentals, buying really low, getting a lot of cash flow, making a lot of money every single month, that's a business, right? A pizza business, a pizza shop, can make a lot of cash flow, but when you go and you try to sell it, you probably are not going to make a lot of money selling that business unless somebody's like really in the market for that particular type of operation. And operating a pizza shop, while it might seem simple, it's not. There's a lot of work. You have to be in there early. You have to have the ingredients. There's so many moving pieces. So that's operating things like a business. Whereas an investment, and when we talk about, the big term, passive income, right? Passive income is meant to be as close to passive income as possible, meaning you put the tenant in there, you get the cash flow, you just monitor the property, and you have the money coming in, and the property grows and grows and grows and grows in value. That's treating it like an investment, right? If you're running around answering phone calls all day, spending hours a day on your property, the property is running you, not the other way around. So you're pretty much owning a business at that point. Whereas a solid investment shouldn't consume that much of your time.
I agree, but I think it depends on how many properties you have, because at some point it will become that business, no matter what you do, no matter where you invest or what kind of tenants you have. It will happen.
No, you're absolutely right. And to just bridge onto the point that you said, I'm already at, I think, 7 or 8. I forget. See, when you start to forget how many units you own, I think that's when you start to kind of realize that there's actually a lot more work than it is of just like, hey, passive investment. If I had one property, one duplex, it would probably be almost truly passive, right? Maybe I'm answering a phone call every now and then. Yeah. Now, when you introduce so many units, you pretty much have a tenancy turnover every single year. And then when you increase more and more and more units, that's going to be twice a year, 3 times a year, 4 times a year, 5 times a year, so on and so forth. Now, at that point, when you've reached that many level of units, I think that it's probably important unless this is your entire job, this is what you do, I think it's probably important to get a management company if you have another business or another job or whatever that might be. But still, having the property be in a really good neighborhood and having 20 units in A-class real estate, your phone's not going to be ringing as much as if it's going to be in a D-class neighborhood. Correct. So, maybe you're spending 3 hours or 4 hours a month on that, that kind of like portfolio. But here you're spending 3-4 hours a day on that portfolio.
That is true. But also to add to that, to treat your property as investment, not as a business, which I usually say the other way around to our clients. But to your point, a lot of people do not understand that it's not just about the cash flow, it's about appreciation, and it's also about taxes. Yes. Until you've done your taxes probably like 2 or 3 times with real estate rental income coming in and having rental property in your taxes, you do not understand what it can do for you. The more you get into it, the more properties you get, you see how the game works. It's not just about the cash flow. So you always keep that in mind.
I have clients who, they're not buying real estate for cash flow. They're buying real estate for taxes because they need to offset their income. They need to, high paying doctors, lawyers, like people who also can't write off a lot of their income because of the position that they have. It's very powerful when, sure, you're making $400,000 a year, but the government takes almost half of that at every single time that you get a paycheck.
Yeah.
So when you have the real estate and you get your real estate professional status too, because you've owned so many properties, you start to really see that, and that money starts to come back into your pocket.
Quick update. Our Jumpstart Northeast Philly program is live and we're accepting applications now. If you are in Northeast Philly and you're looking to learn how to find, buy, finance, fix, rehab, sell, or rent a property in Philadelphia, this program is built for you. It is based on proven success of Jumpstart Germantown program and focused on building local wealth while improving our own neighborhoods. You also will hear from multiple industry experts such as lenders, contractors, zoning experts, and more, sharing real practical knowledge to help you succeed. Don't wait, space is limited. The first program is running in September. The application process is open. To apply, click the link in the show notes or go to trustartrealty.com, select resources, Jumpstart Northeast. That is true. That is powerful. But again, you can talk to people about it as long as you can, as long as you want, but until they do it, they don't really grasp the whole idea of it, how it's exactly going to affect them.
And it's hard to understand. I get why, because it's not like, oh, I'm actually making this money. But you're right. Once you see it, you're like, hey, I'm actually making this money because I'm not giving it away.
So, Alan, you're active on bigger pockets that you mentioned a few times. And obviously, you were an agent and you talk to investors all the time, help them buy in different properties in different places. So what are the top 2 or 3 questions that you keep getting about investing in Philly?
The number one question I get is, where in Philly do you invest? Pretty much what we've been talking about, up until now.
Full time, yeah.
Yep. And then the next question is, I have $50,000. I've saved up this. I'm trying to buy my first investment. What should I buy? What should I get? And it's kind of to bring up a previous thing that we talked about. It's a lot of people want to have the sexy investment, meaning they want to do a fix and flip and make $100,000. They want to do a crazy burr and make all this kind of money, invest $100,000, put 40 into it, cash out refi at 350,000 ARV or whatever it might be. But honestly, I tell a lot of people that if you haven't bought your first property yet, meaning you don't have a primary residence and you're still renting, the best property that you can buy right now for yourself is your own property. One that you can live in, maybe rent out another unit if you can get yourself into a duplex, which is challenging in a really good market. Or maybe it's a small townhouse, maybe it's a small twin that you live in, and then a couple of years down the line, it becomes your rental property. So I think that's a really powerful way to get started because, with only $50,000, there's only so many assets that you can buy with 20% or 25% down. But when you use leverage and you're able to put 3 to 5% down on an asset, now you can buy something for $400,000 or $500,000, which is going to appreciate much better over time because you're going to buy in a better neighborhood. You're going to buy a better property type, better property class, probably better condition too. So I think that the house hacking route or the primary to investment is a really good strategy for most people.
Yeah, we get that question a lot as well, not just for people who buy in for the first time, but just for investors as well. Like, hey, I have this amount of money. Where should I buy or what should I buy? And that is always, that depends. That depends on you. What is your goals? What are you looking for? Like, what is your criteria? I can tell you where I would buy, but that doesn't mean that it's going to work for you. We're different people. We have different strategies. We have different criteria, what we're looking for.
Yep.
So I think all of that is very personal. And when you, again, get in this, like, one fits all advice from some article that, hey, if you have this, go here, do that. I don't think it ever will work for anything. It's not just about real estate.
Correct. Yeah. Everybody's situation is so different. Everybody, well, what is your situation? Are you renting and you have 3 kids? Are you a single guy? Are you this? Are you that? Because If you're a single guy, maybe you buy a duplex with 1 bedroom, 1 bath units, and that's okay for you. But if you have a whole family behind you, you buying a 1 bedroom apartment is going to be incredibly tight. Or maybe with $50,000. And I think, you know, everybody likes to gravitate naturally to the things that are going to make them a lot of money now. And like the things that are what I call sexy, like crazy returns, crazy kind of just like small investments, big outputs. But those kinds of things are really, really tough to find that truly, truly work. And I think that when you hear too many people pushing that idea, or you hear these gurus online or these seminars or whatever, I mean, it's more enticing to listen to them from their perspective than it is to listen to you or to me. I had this guy who came in to one of my happy hours that I host in the city, and it's like a investment, bigger pockets kind of thing that I host. And he came to me, he's like, you can buy an apartment complex with no money down. I went to this real estate seminar in Greater Oaks or whatever it was. It was like this big seminar around here. And I'm like, okay, how? He's like, well, you open up an LLC, you get a business credit card, you borrow against the credit card, you buy the apartment complex, you renovate it, and then it appreciates in a year, and then you do a cash out refi. And I'm like, okay, yes, a lot of things have to fall into place for that, but what if it doesn't appreciate? Now you're $250,000 in credit card debt that 1 month will just destroy you if you don't pay that interest off. Like, it's just, that sounds a lot cooler than, hey, buy in Bucks County for $450,000, maybe make a couple $100 a month, and then 12 years down the line, you're going to be really, really happy that you bought it. People want to be happy now, not 12 years down the line,
Yeah. I agree with that. So for new landlords in Philly, do you recommend that they manage their own properties at the first, or they hire professionals from the beginning?
I think if you're doing it, if it's just one property that you're buying for yourself, definitely manage it yourself. Try to have a mentor that maybe you can ask questions to. I try to provide that like with my service as a real estate agent. So if they use me, I was just talking to a client of mine who had a scenario with his tenant, and I just kind of gave him my 2 cents on, how he should handle it, or what he should do or what he shouldn't do. And so, because I think that experience is really good to have. And just like anything in life, I think it's good to know how to do it yourself, so that when you pass it on to somebody else, that they're doing the job the right way, or that the way that you wanted to do it, right? So it's tough with a lot of things, but I think with managing property, especially just one, I think it's good to do it yourself first.
Before we continue, I would like to take a moment to thank our sponsor, TrustArt Realty. If you're a landlord in Philadelphia, managing rentals can be complex. That's why TrustArt Realty is offering to all of our listeners a free rental analysis or management advice session. Whether you need help understanding market trends or optimizing your rental strategy, they've got you covered. To claim your free session, just send us an email to trustartrealty@phillylandlordguy.com, or click the link in the show notes to fill out a quick form, and somebody will get in touch with you. And talking about property management in the city, what is your experience being with property management companies? Any tips for picking the right one, or red flags to avoid when looking into one?
I manage all the properties myself, and my family has a property management company. It's just one person kind of just managing, and we had some help before, and we kind of scaled it down a little bit. And I'm going to get to your point here, but what we had before was we had a lot of properties, but not in the right neighborhoods and not in the right areas. And so, we would have a bunch of properties over here, and then over here, and then over here. And so every neighborhood is so different. And when you have only such a small, narrow, amount of personnel managing all of this, you spread yourself too thin, and it becomes really overwhelming. So if I was looking for a property management company, I would try to look for somebody that is specialized in a particular area. Like maybe, if they have properties all over the place, I think it's tougher to manage those for that property management company unless they have a division that does Northeast Philadelphia, just does Roxborough, does Southwest Philly, does this neighborhood, does that neighborhood. Because I think we were spreading ourselves way too thin, and we found that by eliminating a lot of these like scattered properties and neighborhoods that we didn't want to be in, we were able to actually focus more on our small little niche market and earn the same amount of money in terms of the management perspective. And for us, that became beneficial because it was less time invested. It was similar amount of money, but for the consumer, it was really good too because they got a better experience. I think that when you spread yourself too thin, I think that you might lose a little bit of service for that.
Okay. And any red flags that you need to look into when you selecting a property management company?
Let's say I bought a investment property, and I'm just going to keep using Utah, right? And I obviously I can't manage that property myself just because of the proximity of where I am and where I'm located. I would interview that management company and I would ask them if I can get a few addresses of where their properties are located. I don't necessarily need to go inside, but maybe I would just drive around and see what condition the properties are in. I know that a lot of it has to do with the owner because you might have a great property management company, but the owner doesn't want to put a single dime into it. But at least this way, it kind of gives me a little bit of a buffer, so to speak. Because if I go to like 10 properties and all 10 properties are just dilapidated, then something's going on here, right? Either they're not selecting the right people to work with, or they're not taking care of the property, or whatever it might be. But if I go in there and there's 8 out of the 10 properties are really well maintained, manicured lawns, like everybody kind of looks over their stuff, I'd be really happy with that result.
Okay. And on that subject of lending money on your property and upkeeping it, with Philly housing stock being so old, a lot of properties 100 years and older, where do you tell your investors to spend renovation money, and where it is usually wasted?
When I actually get this question a lot in terms of not necessarily this question, but I start working with an investor. And an investor starts sending me houses, and they send me the stuff that you're kind of talking about. This, let's just take Manayunk, for example, this 1905 built row home that has the original baseboards, ungrounded outlets, weird layout. And I tell them, I say, look, if you're okay with just, painting this property and like renting it out as is, maybe doing some minor stuff, that's fine. But you're going to be running into so many headaches because your plumbing is end of life, your electrical is end of life, your whatever the condition of the roof is, the windows or whatever it is. But when you're buying those kinds of properties, if it hasn't been properly rehabbed in the past 20, 30 years or so, and I mean full gut renovation, if that hasn't happened in the past 30 years or so, that's going to fall onto you. Or maybe you hold it for 5 years and you're going to try to dump that onto somebody else. But maybe 5 years from now, the market sucks and it's going to be really, really tough for you to try to sell that property. So what I say to people is if you're buying an older home like this, it needs to be properly renovated within the past 20, 30 years. Cosmetic stuff, I don't care about cosmetic renovation. I don't care about the color of the cabinets, what kind of tiles they used in the bathroom, what kind of flooring they put down. All that stuff you can change for a reasonable budget. But once you start ripping out the walls and, addressing electrical, plumbing, all those things, if you just have a house that's been patched, you have a crippling house. You need to gut it and you need to redo it properly.
How would you know if it was renovated within last 20 to 30 years?
So a lot of the signs happen in the basement, and you can see what kind of plumbing was used. You can look at the electrical panel and see the wires kind of coming out of it. You can also identify any signs of knob and tube. And another big giveaway is plaster walls. If the property has plaster walls, it's very likely that no one went behind those walls and redid them, unless, which I've seen before, in a very nice older home, homeowners will keep the aesthetic of the plaster walls, but put a lot of money into somebody who's going to come in and resurface them, repatch them, and do a lot of interior work, meaning like behind the walls. But typically in Philadelphia, if the house still has plaster walls, it's going to need to be gutted. I can almost like bet my money on that every time.
Okay. So can you walk us through one of your favorite Philly deals? What made it work, where it is, and what challenges you had while dealing with that, and what the numbers look like today?
I've had a good amount. I think that most of my investments have been pretty normal, I would say. I buy, I put some money into it, I put a tenant in. And I think a lot of it, the reason why they worked was because I bought them at the right time. The interest rates were low. The market turned for the better. Properties kept appreciating. Like that first property that I had, the one that I was telling you about, I thought that I was going to start out with one kind of investment, and then it ended up being a completely different investment. So challenges wise, it just made it easier down the road. But I think what my favorite deal that I bought was I'm an agent, so I have like Zillow leads that I work with, and I had this lady who wanted to buy a house in like Roxborough or Maniac or something like that, like some row home. And as I had a conversation with her, she kept mentioning this screwed up house that she had, screwed up house, a screwed up house. And I kept, you investor here's a screwed up house and like his lights go off. So I was like, can I see this house? Can I see it? She's like, no, you don't want it. I was like, no. I think I want it. Like, let me see this house. And anyways, it took me probably about 5 or 6 months to convince her to just let me see the property. And I got there, it was completely dilapidated, just falling apart. And all she did was just open the door and said, this is the most you can see. And it was just disgusting inside. Fecal matter, urine, heroin needles, like the walls were caving in like this. So I told her, look, I can't buy this house for the house's value. I have to buy it for whatever the land is worth. Maybe I have to knock this thing down. And so we agreed on it. I think I spent like maybe $30,000 on this house. It was nothing crazy. And lo and behold, she actually lied to me. And when I got into the property, her sister was squatting in the house. And so that's why she only opened the door so much.
Right.
But because of the condition of the property and because there was no running water, no utilities, it was pretty much unsafe to be there, I was able to kick them out. So, and then I did a full gut clean of the house, and I ended up selling it for a profit. And I think that was like a very, very interesting deal, just because of how long it took me to just get into that door, and just the biggest challenge of like just getting there. And so, yeah, I think
Which area that was in?
Southeast, like Philly, like Buste Avenue.
Okay.
Yeah, like Island, like near Island Ave over there. So it's like, it's okay, the area. I wasn't planning on holding on to it, but basically a flipper came in and bought it. And it worked out for everybody.
Yeah. So have you ever talked a client out of buying the property in Philly? And if so, what was the issue, and how did they respond?
Almost every day, I talk people out of buying houses. And for the reason that I mentioned, we were talking about like, hey, how do you know a property, what kind of renovation it needs? And it's for mainly that reason. It's for condition. People underestimate how much money it takes to renovate something. And when I walk in, and I'm sure you know this as well, you can walk in and be like, I need to do everything here. And it might not seem that way for the average person. For them, kitchen looks fine, these look fine. But then, when you start looking at details and understanding the property, I know for a fact that property is just going to cause a lot of headache. And so I tell people, I said, look, I wouldn't want you to buy this, but if you want to buy this, I can't force you not to, but I wouldn't be comfortable with you buying something like this.
Yeah, that makes sense. And what is your outlook for the Philly market, real estate market, over the next few years? Do you see any big shifts, or are you preparing for anything?
If you were to ask my dad, he thinks that the market's going to crash. And I think he's been thinking the market's going to crash for the past 5 years. I don't know how I feel about that, because I think Philadelphia is still a very hyper local market, because you go to, North Philadelphia, buy whatever you want. negotiate whatever deal you want. There's 400 houses for sale in one little tiny zip code. Every other house is for sale. But you go to other parts, you go to Westmount area, you go to Northeast Philly, you go to the suburbs of Philadelphia, and you're begging for somebody to take your offer because of how competitive it is. I think that the nature of our market in Philadelphia for the neighborhoods that I think are really good, I'm more worried about people being able to actually buy in the future, because the prices of these houses will, in my opinion, just continue to go up and up in value. And I think for the sake of, we have such a limited supply here in the Northeast, like Jersey, New York, Massachusetts, there's only so much land available. And there's so many people locked in at such low rates that I just don't see the demand outweighing the supply, or not the other way around, the supply outweighing the demand, unless everybody just starts selling. But there has to be a reason for that, for the supply to outweigh the demand. What do you think?
I agree with you. And also these neighborhoods that you call out, they don't really have empty land to build on. And that's what's happening with especially Bucks County and Northeast Philly, is that the areas were never dilapidated. They were not falling apart. Even if you're in the area where the housing stock, I don't know, 80 years old, it's still in good shape and it's not falling apart, and nobody is knocking it down and building something new. So we literally have almost zero new construction in this area.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's going to be changing anytime soon. I don't know, maybe in 30, 40 years when something starts falling apart. But as of now, I don't see that's changing. And that's just making all the housing inventory just more scarce. It doesn't matter what kind of market it is. Yes, of course, market affects everything, and it can go down. It can be seller's market, it can be buyer's market. But as far as the supply, I don't see that in these specific areas that supply will suddenly go up much.
And that's actually a really cool point that you mentioned, because I'm licensed in Jersey too. And in New Jersey, there are so many markets that are just, you can't even believe these prices, but these houses are over 100 years old, but they're in such good condition. And people maintain them so well that this house will probably stay there for another 100 years plus. And what I'm noticing in the suburbs here, where, maybe you do have a really, really old house or really small house, a lot of people are like taking that house and they're knocking it down and just rebuilding for themselves, because there's no other land available. There's nothing else available. And they're just taking advantage of it that way. So yeah, not enough vacant land, I think.
Yeah, I agree with that. And Alan, what would you say one of the Philly specific mistake that cost you time and money early on that you wish somebody warned you about?
Trying to think of one specific example here or something, but I was really lucky to have my dad in this and with me. He didn't let me make too many mistakes. I had a really good mentor, and he was through a lot of those mistakes. One mistake that I don't know if it's Philly specific, I think it's just more in general, is that I think when people do renovations to the property, they try to save too much money on things that don't matter. And, what I tell people, I say, look, like when you're renovating a bathroom, for example, your costs for labor are pretty much fixed. And whether you put a dollar per square foot tile or $2 per square foot tile, the contractor doesn't care. He doesn't know the cost of this material. He doesn't know what's actually, if it's better quality or worse quality. It's putting it on is the same amount of labor. And the difference in that price today is maybe, $400 or $300 or something like that. But that's it. Once it's in, and you don't have to worry about that down the line. And that was something that I tried to save a lot of money on in my first renovation, that he was just trying to explain to me, like, don't do that. Don't cut corners on things that are not going to matter in the long scheme of things. If you're already spending $50,000 for a renovation, whether you spend 53 or 54, maybe even $55,000 for the renovation. Okay, you're spending maybe 10% more, but you're getting 50% of a better result. So Philly specific, it's tough to say, but I was blessed with a really good mentor. So I'm a little bit biased and a little bit lucky in that regard.
Yeah, that sounds like it. That's good for you. What is your number one piece of advice, someone who is looking for investment property or trying to buy or invest in Philadelphia?
Don't believe a lot of the hype. Like, just understand that a true and solid investment strategy is something that's going to work over a long term. Don't think that you're going to make so much money right away. Just buy the right location, buy the right property type, and put the right people in there. Don't worry too much about the short-term gains. Look at the long-term profit of things. It's really easy to just get caught up in things that will make you money right now, but buy the right property in the right location.
Great advice.
Yeah.
So, Alan, with that, if any of our listeners or watchers would like to get in touch with you, what is the best way and where they can find you?
I think Instagram is the best because it has my phone number on there, it has my email, and also they can keep up with any of my content. And my Instagram is Asriance Allen, so it's my last name, then my first name.
Okay, and we'll drop that in the show notes as well. So if anybody is looking to get in touch with Alan, Instagram is the way to go. Alan, thank you so much for joining us today. It was great. A lot of good information for Philly investors, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
That's a wrap on today's episode. Big thanks to Alan for sharing his time and his perspective on investment in Philadelphia with us today. And do not forget to follow us on Instagram or any other social media platforms. You can find us at Philly Landlord Guy. Thanks for listening and see you next time.